Good evening, everyone. I'm Navya Singh, and I will be moderating this session today as we discuss advancing women-led innovations in climate action. I am an independent journalist, and I've been actively working on issues related to sustainability, climate action, and also the voices of those who are the most impacted by climate change and climate crisis. I've worked with digital news organizations like the Logical Indian, the Quint in the past, and I believe social media is a space where one can really reach out to people and empower them with the information that they need. And keeping this in mind, I've done some extensive videos on sustainable living, climate crisis on social media platforms like Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter. And with every new report that I've covered, there's a new warning with every report. But my aim has been to prompt action and convince people that the crisis is well underway. As I mentioned before, the motive of this event is to discuss advancing women-led innovations in climate action. And to boost such efforts, UNDP in India, as we all know, and Niti Aayog have joined hands to strengthen the youth-led innovation and social entrepreneurship ecosystem through Youth Collab India. UNDP, along with Renew Power and Foundation for Innovation and Technology Transfer, also FITT, at IIT Delhi, has also launched the Women Climate Champions Impact Aim SDG 5 Accelerator Program, which aims to supporting women climate entrepreneurs to advance women-led innovations in broader renewable energy space. Now, as part of this entire Youth Collab initiative, the National Innovation Dialogue 2022 is a series of multiple events that we've been seeing all throughout this month and will focus on climate action and climate entrepreneurship. Now, for the benefit of our viewers and also the panelists that we have, I'd like to explain why exactly are we conducting this session and this event. Climate and gender are quite interlinked. The IPCC report that made headlines last year warned that Earth's temperature is likely to increase by 1.5 degrees centigrade by 2040. In another IPCC report released very recently, impacts of global warming have been termed irreversible. Now, there are several such reports with several such warnings. Reports have also suggested that women are more vulnerable than men to the impacts of climate change and climate crisis, primarily because they are more dependent on resources that are threatened. In the middle of all these warnings and worrying figures, there's also hope. So if the rise in temperature is kept below 1.5 degrees centigrade, it would reduce projected losses. For this, we need to promote innovative solutions to combat climate change, and these solutions need to be inclusive for both genders and for long-term outcomes. The World Economic Forum in a report has also said that investing in women entrepreneurs would generate higher returns for society as a whole, as women founders and entrepreneurs are likely to employ 2.5 times more women than male-founded businesses. Now, with this, I'd like to introduce some wonderful panelists that we have for today's discussion. First is Mr. Gunjan Patel. Mr. Gunjan is the Regional Director at SAP SE. He has been with the SAP since last 9 years. And prior to that, he'd worked with organizations like Confederation of Indian Industry, Data Monitor, and Interlink. Mr. Gunjan has an expertise in domain of education and skill development, social entrepreneurship development, and impact investment. We also have with us Ms. Garima Garg. Ms. Garima is the Vice President of Human Resources at Renew Power. Previously, she was the Director at Deloitte. She has expertise in domains of leadership management, development, talent management, executive coaching, and organizational design. We also have with us Ms. Vipasha Mathijia. Ms. Vipasha is the founder of VIA Energicals, where the waste is converted into high-value bio-based industrial chemicals for food and beverage and animal feed additives industry. Vipasha has some diverse experience of 4 years in clean tech, F&B, and real estate industries, and currently she's one of the Youth Collab India climate entrepreneurs. We're also joined by Monica Jha. Ms. Monica is a social impact entrepreneur and an inventor at heart. She found her startup Saidi right after engineering with an inspiration to make a social impact. Saidi technology aims at making developing countries safer with the unique lighting concepts, which optimizes illumination and helps in energy and money savings. Before we begin the panel discussion, I'd like the panelists to know that each panelist will be requested to answer 3 questions each. And it'll be great if the responses can be kept maximum of 5 minutes. I'd like to begin with Mr. Gunjan Patel. Mr. Gunjan, you've been working in the social innovation space for years now, and you've worked closely with many women entrepreneurs through projects like Code Unnati. What do you think are the challenges that women entrepreneurs face, and how is SAP bridging these challenges?
Yeah, thanks, Navya, and thank you all. Thanks all in the panel. And Navya, you described the context aptly well. So going
Thank you.
back to so basically, so what challenges or gaps that we are talking about at this point in time, right? So irrespective of let's say we are into a climate action space or education or any other socio developmental requirement, the the nature of challenges would be a lot more generic, and as we go deeper into any domain, there would be domain specific challenges. So for example, let's say uh, safe learning and sharing environment. Are we enabling the ecosystem for women entrepreneur or a social enterprise led by women have ecosystem or enabling space to share their views, opinions without any fears or inhibitions, and how the ecosystem is supporting it. Another would be, let's say, focus on or help in help this women entrepreneur in focusing on their own businesses, especially considering the context wherein they have multiple diverse and varied responsibilities and obligations personally as well as professionally and on the social front. So that's a lot more inbuilt into our society. So how we address those challenges. Then let's say a community of women entrepreneurs. So now in last few years there have been momentum around this topic, but there's a lot more to be done. For example, let's say I would speak about social enterprises in the domain of craft, in the domain of artisan, or in the domain of those who are helping rural livelihood, right? But if you look at other domains, there is still more to be done, wherein we can build a strong community of women entrepreneurs. Then look at geographically, tier 2, tier 3 cities and towns, even rural areas. Innovation sees no boundary, that may come from any place. But do we have strong infrastructure? Infrastructure as in
I think there's some connectivity issue with Gunjan's internet. This question is open to all the panelists. If there's anybody else who wishes to answer it and talk about challenges that women entrepreneurs face, I think that would be great. Okay, so we'll get back to Gunjan. Garima, I'd like to ask you, Renew Power is one of the leading organizations in the alternate energy space and that particular domain, and has been at the forefront of supporting innovations in this space. What, according to you, are some of the key areas within the large renewable space where you see technology and innovation playing a crucial role in the coming years?
Yeah, sorry, can you hear me? I think I got dropped off.
Yes, Gunjan. I think I'll come back to Garima. You can continue. Yeah.
Yes,
Sure.
sorry all. I think I got dropped off due to poor network connectivity. But yeah, so I think the last point what I was making here is also the equitable funding opportunities to the depth and breadth of set of women entrepreneurs. And what I believe is that this is this may or may not be restricted to particular domain, but I think this is applicable to many women entrepreneurs that we are talking about. So yeah, I'll pause here and yeah, hand it off to you.
Sure. Garima, as I was talking, Renew Power is one of the leading organizations in the alternate energy domain. With your experience, what are the key areas within the large renewable space where you see technology and innovation playing a very crucial role in the coming years?
Right. Well, thanks, Navya, and thank you for having me over. So, look, I mean, this is actually, if you look at technology in the context of renewables, it's really the pivot around which we are seeing the scaling up that's happening in the sector. While there are many other factors which are contributing to it, but one of the biggest drivers of growth in the sector has been the fact that a cost of generating power through renewable sources has become competitive, or even in many cases cheaper than fossil fuel based power, right? And that has been a big driver of growth, because at the end of the day, electricity is a commodity. When you and I as consumers get power, we do care about the cost, or utilities who are buying power from generating companies like us care about cost, right? And technology is the pivot around which this cost reduction has happened. So technology is going to be a very significant player as this sector continues to scale up. And there are so many areas of technology. Solar is a big growth area, and around solar there are so many technology areas, right from floating solar, which could be an interesting new development, which could take the question or challenge around land availability to a different level, or aspect of how can we use land for mixed use, right? You can use land for agriculture and yet at the same time have solar panel installed in the same space. So there are aspects
Right.
like it. There are technologies in the wind space. So larger the wind turbine, it can have a huge impact on the kind of power that a wind turbine can generate. And those technologies are continuously developing. Technologies around hydrogen, this is the flavor of the season. Everyone is talking about hydrogen. That's the next game-changing space from a technology perspective. Storage, as the contribution of renewables on the grid keeps increasing, storage is becoming very important. So having large-scale storage projects will be, again, a big change that will happen. So innovation is really at the core. Technology changes is at the core. And when the integration will start to happen, where you're generating power using renewable sources, but that energy is being transmitted to wherever heat is required, wherever gas is
Right.
required. So you find those transition points, integration across different sectors. That is where the next change will happen, because a lot of greenhouse emissions are happening through, for example, mobility, right? So using that
Yes.
electricity and connecting it to e-mobility, that's another area of innovation. So the kind of technological innovation that this space will see, our mind cannot even imagine. And that is where opportunities galore. I could go on and go on this question itself, but I will pause and hand it over back to you to bring in other panelists.
No, I think you've made wonderful points, very crucial points. Vipasha, I'd like to ask you, for every young woman, this is true of any industry, there are so many challenges that every young woman faces. As a young woman, what do you say are the challenges that you faced in setting up an enterprise in the space of waste management? And how do you think Youth Collab has supported you in your journey?
Right. Thanks, Navya, and thanks for having me over. I think, firstly, being a young entrepreneur is a challenge in itself. And especially being a young woman entrepreneur may be a little more challenging, in today's day and age also. So I think when I, started off as an entrepreneur, especially in the waste management field, I did, receive some friction, also from the society or from the stakeholders, saying that, this is how you're going to deal with waste, or, how you're going to deal with waste collection, being a woman, how will you deal with these stakeholders, especially, one of the major stakeholders is our government, our municipalities. So being young and, you do not have any experience dealing with our ULBs, etc. So I think overcoming that and starting off with a very minimal experience and being a woman and just being headstrong and doing what I thought was the right thing to do and move forward with this was, I think, one of the major challenges. And I think also till date, I think one of the common challenges I think every woman entrepreneur might be facing is that also considering the kind of stakeholders that I have to deal with, some corporates or ULBs and I think being young and being a woman, you need to make that little extra effort to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
That I feel. So putting in that extra effort as compared to your male counterparts and convincing them that you have the capability to do and what you're proposing to do, especially when you're trying to do something innovative and something that would create this huge climate impact, and convincing them, I think that is a little challenge that I face even today. And that is, I think, something I believe that most of women entrepreneurs might be facing. Coming to Youth Collab, I think it's hands down one of the best programs that I have been part of so far. I think owing to the bang on relevant mentorship that I got, I think from mentors at Climate Collective, especially, I think was great. And I also had the chance to network with major industry stakeholders from waste management sector. So mainly overall, I think it helped me refine as an early stage startup. I think it helped me refine our business plan, our strategies, and also network through major relevant stakeholders in the waste management system. So yeah, I think I recommend it to every young entrepreneur in the climate space to be a part of it. Thank you. Over to you.
Absolutely. I think you've made one very important point that women entrepreneurs, when they start off young, they have to take that one extra step. I think that's true of every industry. And I'd also like to say all the women present here have definitely done a brilliant job at that. So cheers to that.
Yes.
I'd like to move to Monica. The renewable energy space is not an easy space to venture into, especially when it comes to leading an enterprise. It requires a lot of support, motivation, and various linkage creations. How did you manage to build an enterprise like SIT Technologies? What sort of barriers and challenges did you have to face?
Am I clearly audible?
Yes, you are.
Perfect. So one thing that I would like to specifically point out is, the kind of customers that we directly have to deal with, government or enterprises, industries, right? Different categories of organizations. Now, there are different organizations with different levels of structured approach that they have in, trying to adopt innovation, or even for that matter, enroll a new vendor, or, allow them to work on any of the problem statements. One thing that becomes extremely difficult is to make them unlearn the bias or unlearn their age-old knowledge that they have really carried forward. And because educating has to start from that, specific step, enabling them to unlearn and probably making them realize that this is possibly where your bend in the thought has to come. So that is the most challenging part, I would say. And of course, there are different organizations which are so deeply motivated in adopting innovative solutions. And but at the same time, there are different organizations who have the will, but they don't have the right structure, or they don't have the right tools to actually take up the required technology without the previous bias or anything, that it might not work, or it may damage their existing systems or whatever, in like different contexts, of course. So these two things specifically is something that I have been personally facing in my organization. So yeah.
Right. Monica, you've been part of different accelerator programs and support programs. How do you think these initiatives are helping entrepreneurs like you? And would you want the private sector to support?
So the different startup support systems, and specifically the women startup support system, which has emerged in the recent years, it has really normalized the fact that innovative ideas or newer businesses or smaller 5 people, 10 people teams can actually make a huge impact. And this normalization is something that has really I have really been thankful for that. People do not really expect the world from startups in the initial couple of orders, but at the same time they give a helping hand, even the customers for that matter. They right from being able to adopt some of the initial tools which are industry adopted, I have learned from my own customers, and that I'm definitely very much thankful for. From the private sector, something that I can really ask for is a little more patience and a little more organized structure in terms of funds. And instead of how much I have seen them be extremely ecstatic to see the social impact part of it as a good conversation starter, it should also be a deal closer at some point in time. Is something that I would want the industry to go ahead in that direction. So that's it, I guess.
Absolutely. Gunjan, coming back to you, what do you think? Why do you think collaboration is important to further women-led innovations and enterprises?
Yes. So, Navi, I think before I answer that, let me also, sort of share my thoughts on what Monica said. I think
Absolutely.
there are two types of, or I mean, there may be more, but I would broadly bucket into two types. The two types of programs or support mechanisms are created. One where companies have a direct interest and it's more business related or business led, where they partner with startups or social enterprises, right? And their companies do have long, short, and medium term goals, objectives in place, which are more or less financial and otherwise. And there is another very important stream of investment or programs that are emerging, which are through support from CSR. Now, there you see that actually companies, and here is a case of SAP, where per se we do not see any, or we do not want that return. If I want to put it very bottom line, because our key objective would be to strengthen the ecosystem, create a mechanism and framework or infrastructure in form of incubator or accelerator or program like Youth Collab for young or for social entrepreneurs or for entrepreneurs, like Vipasha mentioned or Monica you mentioned. So that irrespective, because we do not expect under CSR program what is monetary return instantly, or otherwise as well. So that's where you do look out for such programs, and maybe probably I think Sneha, you can connect us or you can reach out to me, and we can discuss what programs we drive. Now, maybe Navya, I'll come back to your question.
Yes.
Right. So, uh, see, first and foremost, I feel that many corporates now realize that there's a very important way to strengthen economic activities and economic development is via working with social enterprises, micro enterprise, and startups who bring in innovative solution, who may or may not use technology, but have innovative business model where there is a scope to create net new jobs, as well as ability to provide innovative solution on any of the pressing socio-economic needs. And that's where corporates through their CSR grants partner with technology business incubators, intermediaries, and like we have one such collaboration with UNDP on supporting, helping women-led enterprises, or I would say women-led micro and social enterprises. Another similar example that we have is through collaboration with CIIE. So, I mean, bottom line is that one, such collaborations are very much helpful because incubators and intermediaries do bring in quite a good experience, outreach network. They have the kind of human resources who understand this ecosystem very well. And what corporate can bring in besides CSR grant is also some bit of our own experience. I mean, we call SAP as a 50-year-old startup. We still have that culture of startup while we are a multinational corporation, and we still feel that all our new products, solutions, strategies are somewhere developed through the agile thinking, the thinking of a startup, and this is what we want to take it back to the
Right.
ecosystem. And that's where the programs that we drive with UNDP or with partners like CIIE would really help us to scale such social enterprises and startup. And that would actually help us to do certain things. For example, uh, basis the experience and knowledge of our partner, we are able to run something like sprints. Now sprints are a quick validation process wherein which enables social enterprises and startup to understand or get their business model, etc., validated to make it lean and substantial. And that doesn't mean that we want to alter or anything, but it is essentially helping us to reach to let's say tier 2, tier 3 demographies or geographies, and essentially the locations where such mechanisms are not available. Another is like we are able to run a cohort based approach. So in cohort based approach, while there would be several other social enterprises, there are also one to one focus on each individual social enterprises and startup, and that would enable us to look at each and every business problem, each and every concern separately, and come up with agreeable solutions in a agreeable way, which is acceptable by the social enterprises. We are able to create more women-led mentors and networks. I mean, this is one thing which we could see with UNDP and in the rural parts of Karnataka, where groups of women-led mentors were created, and which worked very well for women-led enterprises, because there was some perceptible coherence between the enterprises and the women mentor, and that could also lead to a lot of successes in our program. Well, there are many such things which we can discuss, but I think essentially using one's own CSR grant also would be a wonderful idea to really foster and propel this ecosystem and young entrepreneurs.
Absolutely, absolutely. Very, very well said. Vipasha, this is a very interesting question that I have for you. How important do you think role models are for young women to become entrepreneurs?
Certainly, I think very important. I think I started up, on this journey, and I'm still continuing. I think it's mainly because of, the one role model that I have had, my mom, actually. I see her going to work every day, driven, motivated, in her 50s. I think it's inspiring to be around women. So I think having just inspiring and motivated people around you, not necessarily uber successful people, but just someone who's supportive of what you want to do and keeps you motivating, I think is vital to our future young women, generations to come, to pursue entrepreneurship. So I think it's extremely important. Yeah.
Very true. I have a question for Garima. Garima, how can women be better integrated in space of climate innovation? What do you think are some of the key strategies or crucial strategies that you have in place to ensure and promote this gender inclusivity in your workplace or programs?
Right. Yeah, actually, I would kind of look at this question from two perspectives. One perspective is, and that's sort of a broader perspective of women in the whole space of, clean energy. Because, at the end of the day, women entrepreneurship is also springing out of the fact that, there are more and more women who are part of the sector as it is, right? And then some of them take up entrepreneurship challenges, and some of them work in larger organizations, right? And then if you look at just that equation, today, if you look at us, for example, we are at about 8% diversity ratio, which isn't great by any count. When we look at the global numbers around that, we are we're looking at something around 32%, right? Which is a very good, at least a much better benchmark for us to aspire to get to at some point in time. So that still is not that great because, otherwise you look at various other sectors, they are doing, much, much better. But having said that, this number of 32% is still way better than the traditional oil and gas, manufacturing kind of sectors. So the first milestone is really to see that how do we get there, right? Because more women you will have in the sector as a whole, it will solve so many of these other problems that we were talking about, like even role modeling, right? Or even mentoring, right? Where do you kind of find those mentors and where do you find those role models if there just aren't enough women in the sector? So the first thing is to really tackle that. And that's something that we've been thinking a lot about. So we've got to get innovative even in this aspect, because one of the challenges that we face is the fact that the nature of this business is such that we have a very distributed workforce. We have 100 plus sites across the country. Some of these sites are very remote. Now, there is a bias in our own minds that how do we get women to be employed in remote sites where there are very few employees, it's a remote location. What about safety, this and that? So first we have to break that mental model or that bias that we have in our mind and find solutions. And there are solutions, if women can go into combat, if women can go into Formula One racing, why can women not work at sites? So this is a bias or a mental block, and we are trying to see, can we have an all women site? Maybe not a very remote site, maybe a site which is relatively closer to a well populated center. And there are enough colleges now which have women engineers, so why can we not target that? So that's what we are trying to do. Then we are also in a better space for us to look at is our manufacturing centers, because we are also getting into manufacturing big time. Now these are relatively easier for us to employ women in, because these are way larger setup than what a single wind site or a solar site would be. Right? So that is again a good integration. Now, when we look at the middle levels in the organization, we do traditionally find that when it comes to enabling functions, we have a fairly good diversity ratio. But when it comes to the core functions, which require experience in the sector, that's where we again lack. But if we look at the fact that as a sector, the way the sector has to grow, we are never going to find ready-made talent within the sector, irrespective of whether we're talking about men or we're talking about women. So really, it requires a lot of open-mindedness to see how we can actually get talent from maybe the traditional energy sector, right? Because that's shrinking and this sector is expanding. So one of the things that we are trying to do is really open up minds of hiring managers to see, can we get people not for their immediate experience, but for their skill and for their attitudes, right? And that's where we can possibly induct far more women at lateral levels, core business roles, in the middle level kind of scenario. So we are also working very extensively to create a different mindset, because it's also about mindset. We are at the end of the day a power sector, so there are some traditional mindsets operating here, and which continue to think that, we don't see a lot of women around, and this is not a job that women can do. So we're working very extensively through a lot of conversations within our company in terms of, why diversity is important. And there are enough role models, to be honest. Now we have enough role models in the company of women doing very well. We recently had a all women team completing a complete design of a project which is now up and running. So we've had some good successes there. So we're working through those. There are other things that we are working through, trying to incentivize our hiring partners, if they help us find diversity candidates, opening up more and more opportunities for people to refer women, colleagues, friends for different positions, driving our senior management very, very accountable for increasing representation in the company, and also really taking ownership to sponsor and mentor, at least one or two women colleagues in the company, and that's something which really has to come intrinsically. It's easier said than done, to tell someone that please mentor and sponsor somebody. It's very easy to say it, but to really kind of bring that thought process, bring that mindset, and bring that commitment into sponsorship. And that is a shift that we are now seeing, because we have brought this conversation very much to the center in our organization. So we are seeing that change in mindset. So this is, whatever I said is really about us as an organization internally. Us as an organization externally is the bit that you started with. So this program that we are running in partnership with UNDP and IIT Delhi, we're starting with the first cohort of 6 entrepreneurs, and Monica's part of that program. So that's a great initiative. And it's a good starting point for us to provide that support, because we do have leaders in the company who can provide that mentorship support to women entrepreneurs. And the whole program, in conjunction with UNDP and IIT Delhi, and all the enablement and capacity building that this program provides. We've started another program, and that's also very interesting program. It's with the UN Environment Program, and that is where we are working with women at the grassroots. The first pilot is happening in Gujarat, where we have women who are working at Run of Kutch, and their job, they're salt pan workers, so it's a very seasonal kind of job. So we are training them, and training them to work around. We've got a lot of facilities in Gujarat, so we're building their skills around solar panels, and that provides them alternate employment opportunities. And through our industry partnership, we will also help them find jobs. So that's another very interesting move, because it's a win-win. We're working with women at the grassroots, providing them skills and opportunities to really improve their lives, and in turn, induct more and more women into the entire ecosystem of climate. So I think lots and lots that corporates can do is just really, really very nascent, I would say, in our sector especially. I've seen other sectors. I've seen, and I've worked, before I moved to energy sector, I've worked more closely with the banking sector. And to the point that Gunjan was making earlier, so there's a CSR bit to it, and there's a business bit to it. Yeah. And in that sector, we do see a lot of startups, entrepreneur incubations are very closely linked with the core business model, and they're providing products and services which complement what the larger organization is able to do, and therefore it makes a lot of business sense. So I think that's where we have to move. That's where it will be a real win-win, and both the strategies of a social impact and a business impact, they have to complement each other.
Absolutely. I think you pointed out this really important thing, the importance of bias and the right mindset that that we need in this industry. Absolutely, very good points. My last question is open to both Gunjan and Garima. Either of you can choose to answer. What are the particular areas of convergence to enable support programs based on women-led innovations in climate action space? How can we scale up these initiatives and create a long-term impact?
Okay, so let me go first.
Yeah,
so
sure.
So some of the things I just mentioned. So I think the scale, right? The key thing is scale, and how will scale happen? Scale will happen through a couple of things. First thing is that the entire movement has to be sustainable, and for it to be sustainable, the first thing is we just need many more women in the sector. And that is where clean tech actually provides a phenomenal opportunity. And Navya, as you said, that the impact of climate change is more particularly or acutely felt by women, and that should therefore also mean that women are at the forefront of
absolutely
whole mitigation by being part of this workforce, right? Because this is so meaningful and this is so satisfying. So the first thing we have to do is we have to find ways and means by which we're really able to provide and sell this opportunity, sell this sector to more and more women, so that they come and be part of it, because that is when real convergence will happen. The second thing is that to enable and support women entrepreneurs, we have to really, we've just we've just taken just a starting step. So there's a lot more to be done. Bringing that close collaboration, really taking some of these programs off the ground and getting results to be seen on the ground, incubating some of these startup ideas so that they synchronize with our own business model, and because then the scaling up will be much faster, and driving the whole ecosystem of women entrepreneurship, starting from seeing more women at the end of venture capitalists itself, so that their buyers also, when they are funding women entrepreneurs, is addressed, because the first buyers also starts over there when you do not have enough men or enough women in the venture capitalist end, and they have to promote and they have to fund. So it's really the entire ecosystem which has to work, and that's when the scaling up will happen.
Absolutely, well said. I'd like to tell this to all our viewers. All the panelists present here today are subject matter experts in their own fields, and they've done some amazingly inspirational, commendable work. It was truly an insightful session. And in the end, for the benefit of our viewers, I'd like to mention about Climate Entrepreneurship Hub. Now, to build a more robust climate entrepreneurship ecosystem, United Nations Development Programme and Atal Innovation Mission are working together to create a multi-stakeholder alliance called Climate Entrepreneurship Hub. It will create a more enabling environment for climate entrepreneurs. The stakeholders working in the space of climate action and entrepreneurship through the Climate Entrepreneurship Hub can support the climate startups through different stages of their journey with mentorship, capacity training, networking, incubation, visibility, and much more. Interested organizations working in the climate innovation space can reach out to the UNDP team for more information. I'd like to thank all the wonderful panelists and the viewers for being a part of this panel discussion on advancing women-led innovations in climate action. It has truly been a pleasure moderating this session. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Navya.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.